Kia ora, talofa, namaste, haere mai, and welcome to the Niche Cast, coming at you on the 16th of April, and we are here to discuss Aotearoa sporting matters, specifically some cricket. Got a bit of county championship cricket and Blackcaps T20 cricket to discuss, a couple of facts and figures. New Zealand Warriors had a good draw against the Manly Seagulls at Mount Smart, and they take on the Dragons of St. George and Illawarra Friday night, 8 p.m. in the Gong, which means Niche Case Derby. So we'll be talking all things Warriors and Dragons as well. Got a bit of Wellington Phoenix after their championship victory on the weekend. Winner late in extra time, tough conditions, tough opposition, you grind hard, you get the win. That is stuff that A-League champions are made of. Got a couple of flying Kiwis to touch on, and we'll also be discussing NBL basketball, free agency in the Australian NBL. I think free agency, is that what it's called?
Yeah, if it's called that in the NBA, then it's called that in the NBL. You know how these guys like to be the mirror image.
So we've got movement in the Aussie NBL as well as actual basketball. I prefer to talk about the actual sport. So I do prefer to talk about the actual basketball of the New Zealand NBL rather than the movement in the Australian NBL, but we'll be doing a little bit of both on today's podcast. We're from the niche-case.com, where you can read about Aotearoa sporting matters. Got some big yarns on our website, lots of Blackcaps T20 content, got a deep dive into the Warriors footy at the moment across all three of their top grades. Wellington Phoenix, they're almost getting a weekly treatment from yourself. They're commanding that spotlight. So if you love the Wellington Phoenix, head over to our website. Flying Kiwis will be live. Got everything you need for your Aotearoa sporting needs there on our website, theniche-case.com. And of course, with the news that are coming out on a Monday morning, is a Monday evening and a Friday evening, but specifically the Monday evening, a lot of things we're discussing on today's podcast, we planted those seeds in the Monday newsletter. So you can sign up to that via Substack, thenichecase.substack.com. Sign up, it's completely free, Monday and Friday evenings for the various, that's just where we just let it all out. Say what we need to say, find the stats, find the figures, find the information that you need about New Zealand sport, and we just put it out there. So that's the newsletter. As part of that Substack newsletter, you can upgrade to a paid subscription and then access our subscriber podcast. That's if you want to be through the Substack methods. Otherwise, you can join the Patreon fund at patreon.com/our niche case, EL niche case. And you will find the subscriber podcast there every Thursday. We record that just for folks supporting our mahi and funding what we love to do. And new addition to the Patreon, we're copy and pasting that newsletter into Patreon the following morning. So all the members of the Patreon, they can stay there, they can kick back, and all that information just comes to them. As a thank you for supporting us directly. Of course, if you do want to make a donation, you can do so through Buy Me a Coffee as well. Got a bit of mindfulness?
Yeah, let me just consult my Tao Te Ching book because it felt like a Tao Te Ching kind of day. Chapter 47 on, it doesn't really matter. I was going to say page 80, but different edition is different pages. But the more knowledge you seek, the less you will understand. And I also like to read that as a good thing too. I just think because that is true. Like the more when you get into like a new hobby and you think like, I don't know, I'm gonna learn how to play guitar, and you think you learn a couple chords and then sweet as we're done, and then you learn a couple chords and realize there's all these other chords and there's majors and minors and then there's like bar chords and power chords and let alone solos and notes and all this. Like the more you get into it, the more you realize it's so much deeper than you expected. But then also like I do see that as a good thing. Like the more knowledge you acquire, the more that knowledge humbles you in a way. And I think there's a lot of people who are very firm in their opinions about stuff they don't actually know very much about. And I think that's the exact same effect, just on the other side of the coin as well.
And you're meaning humbled as in the Wellington Phoenix were humbled last week and the Warriors were almost humbled this week.
I guess so. It's just a reminder of your fallibility, but then also a encouragement to continue on the same path, which the Phoenix have done, and which the Warriors will almost certainly do on Friday night. We'll talk about that soon.
Thing with your mindfulness, there was a lot about learning, I think, because the
Yeah,
more you know, the less you understand, which means you got more to learn. And you're staying humble, you're sitting down, you're being humble. Like, okay, I've got plenty more to learn. I've had that there's a few things I want to highlight that I'm learning. So I think there's going to be a fascinating time for the Blackcaps in New Zealand cricket depth, because they're going to Pakistan. I'll drop a stat in a jiffy, but I'm just on this learning tangent. So I'm curious about what the Blackcaps are going to do in Pakistan. I'm curious about how the Warriors are using their under-21s team and how they're using the local Auckland competition, Fox Memorial, because there's players all over the show. So I'm learning about if there's any ranking, if there's any preference to we want players playing Jersey Flegg and we want these players playing Fox Memorial against men in Auckland. I'm learning about how the Warriors are using everything available to them in their system to produce the talent. And when I'm pondering that and learning about that, I've thought that players are coming into New South Wales Cup through Fox Memorial or Jersey Flegg. So it's kind of there's these different avenues, these different silos, but coming into Jersey Flegg, it's like a bottleneck. So you got to really pay attention to coming into New South Wales Cup. So you got to really pay attention who is playing New South Wales Cup. Where are they coming from in terms of where they playing Fox Memorial, where they playing Jersey Flegg and stuff like that. Just things I like to think about. Another thing I'm learning about is I got the old whiff of blood in the water. There's blood in the water. It's a bit gruesome, but it summarizes how I'm feeling at the moment. Because in the niche case, our flags are planted. We do a lot of rugby league coverage, a lot of football coverage, a lot of basketball coverage, a lot of cricket coverage. If you're a fan of those four sports, any one of those four sports, maybe a combination of those four sports, maybe another sport that you think is on the rise, there's blood in the water. Because what's happening with New Zealand rugby?
They're dripping blood and it's going into the water.
This is way too gruesome for the niche case. I don't like this blood in the water idea, but there's a weakness there. There's an injury. There's a small halfback defending in the defensive line. And every other sport should be going, run it straight at that small halfback, because apparently there's board issues, there's governance issues, there's investment issues. We already know the NRL is a far superior competition to Super Rugby. We already know how much talent is going into the NRL from first 15. We already know that NRLW expansion is going to have a massive impact on women's rugby in New Zealand. All these things are happening at the same time. Recent developments are the board governance issues, are the Silver Lake investment issues. You go to netball, well, apparently their broadcasting rights deal is going to be cut down. So that impacts the salary cap. They can't, there seems to be a debate about whether they should be able to play overseas. What's going on? Of course you should be able to play overseas. It's netball. You should be able to play in Australia and make some money. You should be able to play in England and make some money, but they're stuck in New Zealand. There's weakness there. I smell weakness. I smell the blood in the water of New Zealand rugby and New Zealand netball getting a bit weak. So if you're a fan of these other four sports, and again, a combination of those four sports, which essentially the niche case is that, so we're a bit biased in this discussion, but I am learning these weaknesses are being exposed already. Because as those things are happening, like while those sports and those governance things and the rights and the money coming in, those seem to be at least stagnant right now. And as that's happening, these other four sports and these other four communities, they're on the rise. So it's already happening. But especially this year, there's a lot of information around about big issues for rugby and netball. These aren't just like, oh, there's too much TMO. No, these are like governance issues. These are the players' associations saying that the current model is not fit for purpose and nothing's happening. It's funny, and I'm learning. So I'm just staying curious about that because it's pretty damn interesting.
And yeah, like you say, it's already happening. Like you're already seeing young athletes who have a choice between those sort of previous tentpole kind of Kiwi sports and the current tentpole kind of Kiwi sports, making those switches, choosing different pathways than they would have in the past. That's been happening for several years from the ground up, because there's like Black Ferns who are choosing to play NRLW right now, you know.
Well, I was going to ask you, like that's a great example. Like a lot of the new NRLW players are coming directly from Black Ferns, from Black Fern Sevens, or in the case of Alexis Tawaniai, Amelia Pasikala, they're coming from Wharapama Cup. They're coming from Super Rugby Aupiki. But my question to you is, who's your, in football, maybe basketball, who's your latest example to be like, this player pursued a different angle? Because my example from the summer is Jock McKenzie.
Yeah.
Like the dude was playing Super Rugby, NPC Rugby. Now he's playing cricket. And I think Jock McKenzie has serious Blackcaps potential. He seems to be pursuing cricket at the moment. And that was that was like a sneaky development from the summer. Is there anyone who comes to mind for you, especially from the last 6 months, in that category?
I can't think of a specific name in the last 6 months so much as I think, like, I mean, if you go back a little bit further, I think someone like it was Paris Mason won the netball national championship with the Wellington team, and then also won the Tauihi, the national women's basketball competition, also with the Wellington-based team, Tokomanua. But I think that would almost do a disservice to be picking one player out of that. I think basically every single women's basketballer right now in this country would have been playing netball 30, 40 years ago. You know, I think that entire sport is benefiting from that, and the fact that the basketball in general, but women's basketball as well, seems to be on a specific rise. That is kind of coming at the detriment of netball, which still seems to be operating under the idea that this is the sport for women. Like in this country, women play netball and men play rugby. And there's sort of like, that's the, maybe like that kind of was the case 30, 40 years ago. It hasn't been the case for a while, but it's especially not the case now. And if basketball is on the super duper rise, I think that kind of has an equal opposite effect for netball, and it seems to be the case because Tauihi's just like boosting up they're increasing their salaries for players, and netball is shrinking their salaries for players. Like there's a really, really specific correlation there where one's going in one direction and one's going in the other direction. So I think that entire sport is an example of how that dynamic is operating.
Some nuggets from New Zealand cricket, where we've got the lads on the Kiwi County Tour. So Nathan Smith, Tom Bruce, Will Williams and Blair Tickner are the main dudes getting game time at the moment. The only thing of significance here is that Nathan Smith is awesome. So Nathan Smith in the last game, he did hit a 50-plus score. And as we've said in recent podcasts, he's averaging 26.7 with the bat and 25.9 with the ball. So he's, I I think his average might have gone up slightly, but it's gone down with the ball because he's now below 26. Playing for Worcestershire, he scored 58 runs and took 7 wickets in the game. 3 wickets in the first innings, 4 wickets in the second innings. He now has 10 wickets in 2 games of county cricket at an average of 14. So Nathan Smith is on fire. We know he was the best domestic bowler in Plunkett Shield last summer, and he's taken that straight into county championship cricket. So watch out for Nathan Smith. He's building there with Worcestershire. We might get Will Young entering the equation this round. I think he's playing for Nottinghamshire, so watch out for Will Young, because he could score some runs. Be great if he scored some runs, because Tom Bruce, he's got 17 runs in 2 games, averaging 8. And Blair Tickner's got 2 wickets at an average of 53. It's interesting that Blair Tickner's playing for Derbyshire, and he's got... they've got 3 bowlers who have taken wickets out of 7 bowlers who have bowled. One dude's got 12 wickets at an average of 16. Tickner's got 2 wickets at an average of 53, and another dude's got 2 wickets at an average of 53. So it's a weird old bowling mixer there for Derbyshire, but Blair Tickner's there and he's taken 2 wickets, so shout out to him. They've only, I think they were rained down the first game, so they've only played the 1 game, so that's probably why. The other interesting cricket thing I came across was that the Blackcaps, first and foremost, they have played twice as many games, twice as many T20 games as Pakistan since the last World Cup, T20 World Cup. And it's important to note, Pakistan were in that final in Australia, where I think they lost to England. But since then, New Zealand, Blackcaps, they've played 31 games and Pakistan has played 16 games. The Blackcaps have a winning record. They've got 14 wins, 13 losses, 2 tied games, and 2 no results. Pakistan, on the other hand, they've won 5 games and lost 10. So the Blackcaps have played a lot more cricket, T20 cricket, and they've got a better record. They've actually got a winning record, not a twice as many losses as you have wins record. And I'm curious how the young Blackcaps go, because the squad has been weakened now that we've seen Finn Allen and Adam Milne drop out. I am curious if that impacts the Blackcaps' performance. But I am still, my gut is really excited. But it's the same feeling I had when the Blackcaps, I think they won the World Test Championship, then they went back to England. I was really excited, really optimistic, and then they got swept. So it's the same feeling there, so I'm just curious about that feeling, learning about that feeling, learning about this Blackcaps group. But I think this is a really talented T20 team, and of course it's being labelled as a C team, a D team, weak team, whatever you want to say, but there is still a chance that they upset Pakistan across the whole series. I think their T20 talent that I have covered throughout the Super Smash, throughout the written yarns as well, that speaks for itself. And there's still a little group that is competing for T20 World Cup selection as well.
Yeah, there is. And I mean, we went through this once. There's probably half the squad could make that T20 World Cup squad. So I think it's underestimated how much of a weaker side it is. But even the guys who aren't really in that mix, they're arguably the most exciting ones. Okay, Finn Allen isn't there. Well, what happens when Finn Allen isn't there for Wellington in the Super Smash? Tim Robinson comes in and has a slug. Tim Robinson was outstanding in the Super Smash, and here's his chance to play his first internationals for New Zealand. That's pretty cool. I'm genuinely curious to see how that goes. Whether he scores runs or not, that is a big step in his career, and it's no one's make or break from one series, especially an away series. But that's and a funky little formative experience at this stage of his career. And the same now applies as well to Zach Folks, who has been school. I'm pretty sure you've manifested that one happening. Like I think that's I think that's the case. Like shout out to Sam Wells, the resident S Wells, who is on our the paid Substack list. So that's a possibility, and maybe we've got a more influence than we give ourselves credit for. I don't know, but like from having identified Zach Folks bright and early, now he's made his way into the Blackcaps for a tour like this. That is extremely exciting. Do you think he'll play? Like, do you see him sneaking in there? I think with this kind of tour, it probably is the kind of one where most people, if not everyone, are gonna get some game time. I don't know. It seems like that type of tour.
I think he'll play one game and he's going to bowl a hooping in swinger to some poor right-hander and they're going to get out.
Probably Bubba Azam.
Let's go with that. Zach Folks bowling to Bubba Azam, hooping in swinger. Bubba Azam's got no idea what's happening. Stump's knocked over and everyone's like, holy cow, who's Zach Folks? Holy cow, what are the Blackcaps up to? That's my ideal situation. Hopefully maybe let's go with a 3-2 series win. I think that's possible. The Warriors had a 22-all draw with the Manly Seagulls. I thought this was one of the worst Warriors games of the season. And you only need, like, what happened at the end. Somehow they get in a position for a drop goal to win the game. And Tohu Harris knocks the ball on. And they play the ball right before Sean Johnson's going to kick the droppy. Like, that's not usually going to happen, and that sums up the performance from the Warriors. Somehow they rolled through that adversity. I think they were down 16-0. Dropping the ball, mishaps, clunky attack. Like, it was all a bit of a shit show for the Warriors there. Get themselves back in the game, maintain the contest, battle away for a draw. Really gutsy, I'd say. Seagulls were gutsy, like two pretty decent teams. I think the Seagulls are a tricky team for the Warriors for some reason. It might be the Seabold coaching. I think Daddy Cherry Evans is a bit... He's got the kicking game. He's got the passing game. He's got the confidence to do unpredictable things. And I think that works well against the Warriors. And also, another thing I did note, when we were talking about the Rabbitohs game, like, the Rabbitohs don't have speed at the back. So the Warriors, when they're kicking to them, there's no speed. Like, whether it's the dude catching the ball or the next runner, there's no speed. But a few times when the Warriors kick to the Sea Eagles, Trebojevic pokes through a hole just because he's Trebojevic. Like, the Warriors have got their defensive line, but maybe they're a second late on the assignment. Less than that, half a second, quarter of a second. Trebojevic has the speed to make them pay. And then you got Tolu Taukola, who's one of the fastest players in the NRL. Like, Jason Saab wasn't even playing. But Kola, when he runs the ball, because he wasn't kick return meters, he was just running the next play, second play, third play. His speed means, well, speed is power, so he's powerful. But his speed also means that he's getting just further downfield because he travels quicker. So there's less time for the Warriors' defensive line to get up in him. And if Tolu Kula is winning that collision and Tom Trebojevic is winning his collision, those plays go from dominant tackles, winning the wrestle, slowing it down, loading up on the next dude. Those plays change to just get into the ground, get back up, set your line, go again. So the whole wrestle equation that was a big thing against the Rabbitohs wasn't really there against the Sea Eagles, because the Sea Eagles have the ability to shift the ball. They're fast, they're powerful, their collision, their first contact's quite impressive. And there's a lot of, somehow the Warriors just held it together, which I think is pretty impressive. My favorite Warriors thing, though, well, aside from Rocco Berry, who's he gone up against in the last few weeks? A bit of Bradman Best, a bit of Jack Whiten. Then he played against Tolu Kula. Dragons Niche Case Derby. He's coming up against Moses Sully. Well, these are tough. This is like, why don't young centers play consistent NRL footy or any other position. Because in those matchup positions, the other dude's going to be pretty damn good. And Rocco Berry's awesome. I think Cooler gave him the most issues defensively and in attack out of this run of centres. But if you're a centre in the NRL, like, if you're on one edge, you're coming up against Tomoko, Stags, those type of characters. But Herbie Farnworth. Rocco Berry, he's coming up against Bradman Best, Jack Whiten, Cooler, Sully. It's tough matchups throughout the NRL. My favourite thing, though, with the Warriors is that after 2 games, Sjansnikkel Klukstad is averaging 304 metres per game. I'm visiting player NRL pages every day, looking at their stats, sussing things out, pondering the value of this stat versus that stat, the context of this, that, everything else. I've never seen a bloke averaging 300 metres. So shout out to Sjansnikkel Klukstad, because that's happening, and his previous best was 188 metres last season. Now, obviously, it's the old small sample size. Don't think this will continue. Hence, we need to celebrate it. There's a lot of like Joey Manu buzz right now. Well, obviously, we love Joey Manu. Love him at fullback. But if we're big upping Joey Manu's run meters, well, this other bloke, Sjansnikkel Klukstad, is averaging 300 meters at fullback this season, which I just think is cool.
And it means that, yeah, like, is he going to sustain that level? I almost, for his sake, hope he doesn't, because that's too much running. How are you going to do that over a course of a season? And he's coming back from injury to do this in the first place as well. It's unreal. But, and yeah, like, one of these games was a 90-minute game as well. So that's, you get a few extra, get a couple extra carries. That might be the difference between another 30 or so meters. But like, he could, would you say 304 over per 2 games? So he's got 608 meters in those 2 games. He could run for 0 meters next game and still be averaging over 200. Right? he's given himself such a head start. There was some, I meant to double check this, but I did get told that apparently the Joey Manu one, like, he broke the record by like 1 meter by someone who had broken the record by like 1 meter. So there is some, there's some wondering whether maybe the NRL are juking the stats in order to get a nice little narrative. But even if they are, it's cool that it's for Joey Manu, because he has done this for the Kiwis before as well. I think he ran 400 meters in a Kiwis test one time, didn't he? So that's cool. But Sjansnikkel Klukstad's doing 300s every week apparently now. He's such a good player to watch. And when you see him doing that, you're like, yeah, well, that's why Roger Tuivasa-Sheck is playing Sanders. Like, yeah, well, that's why they weren't quite as sharp when Tane Taupiki was playing there, who, like, is a good runner himself, but he's not as powerful a direct runner as Nickel Klukstad is. And I think certainly, like, even aside from the running, and Nickel Klukstad's just silky ability to just glide into the line, catch and pass, and do that kind of stuff was just such a big part of how the Warriors played last season, and it was so clearly something they missed in the first couple of weeks. And I don't think they've got back to like full capacity of what that looks like yet with him in the team. So I think that's still something that's going to continue to ramp up. I mean, conditions weren't ideal, I don't think, in that last game for that. So, and it just in general wasn't a classic Warriors performance, but you still had, I mean, him, Nickel Klukstad in particular, but he's not the only one. But I think he embodies it. There was something that was an issue with how they played in that game, like tactically, game plan, execution wise, I suppose. But it's a strange old game because it also was something where I come away thinking like that's an impressive Warriors team when that's their bad day. Like they're even just the way they did it at the very end, like, yeah, they came from a deficit from the majority of that game, and they were 8 points down with a minute to go and somehow didn't lose. And yeah, like the Seagulls bottled that a little bit. It's just the way you're running into a kicker who's trying a 2 point field goal from nearly halfway kind of thing. It's like he's probably going to miss. You don't need to be so exuberant in that, risking giving away the easy kick. But then also, like Sean Johnson had to nail a sideline conversion to get them into that position in the first place. Granted, the sideline conversion was to make up for missing a sitter of one earlier still. But, there was I don't know, for all the ways in which things didn't quite click, you consistently saw a Warriors team that just kept on running and kept on putting in maximum effort. And I think Nickel Klukstad and all of his run meters embodied that as much as anyone, as well as like they probably should have found a way to win that game at home in Golden Point. Like they had opportunities, but also the way they still defended, even when the attacking opportunities weren't going, they defended extremely well across those extra 10 minutes. It's just like the energy, the fitness, the attitude of all that was like spot on from them. Just didn't quite have the execution in order to turn that into two competition points. But like the fact they got one out of that game is probably more than they had a right to. So that alone is quite impressive.
It's also part of a weird Mount Smart vibe this season. First of all, the TV experience has completely changed from the Sharks game to start the season to this game. Like, I don't know what's happening, but through the TV, there's far less like noise and gimmick stuff. Like they've gone from one extreme to the other extreme, so I'm not mad at it. I'm just fascinated that it's happened. But Sharks starting the season at Mount Smart, bit of a stinker performance. Seagulls at Mount Smart. Like they got the draw, which is a positive result. I don't know if it was a better performance. They've had all three different results at Mount Smart. They had a loss, they had a win against the Knights, they've got a draw against the Seagulls. 3 games, 3 different results. So when you look at the Mount Smart games, just those games, they did play a home game in Christchurch. Great win over the Raiders. 2 of them have been kind of mediocre at Mount Smart. So Mount Smart's a fortress. I'm calling it the temple these days. But maybe it's a temple of learning and mindfulness and connection to the Warriors, because they don't exactly get the best Warriors performance, but you're really learning about this Warriors team and what they're made of in these games at Mount Smart. Because again, 2 of the 3 games at Mount Smart have been below average to average performances, which I don't think many people would expect. A couple other miscellaneous notes from the Warriors. So they had a draw in the NRL against the Seagulls, but they lost the New South Wales Cup and they lost in under-21s. So it was a bit of a tricky day for the Warriors against the Seagulls. I'm not too worried about those other results though, because it's a very young New South Wales Cup team. My favourite nugget there is that round 1, New South Wales Cup, was Tamaita Martin and Chanel Harris-Tavita in the halves. That's awesome. And everything's fantastic when you're full strength, right? This game against the Seagulls, Ben Farr and Paul Roach were in the halves, first and foremost. Neither of them is as good as Chanel Harris-Tavita or Tamaita Martin. But also, they weren't playing in the halves for round 1, obviously. Because Paul Roach was playing hooker, Ben Farr was playing fullback. So they're not even as good. They're also not necessarily ideal halves. You also had Leka Halasima returning for his first game of the season in reserve grade from injury. Scored a fantastic try that just showcased his potential, his ability, and he also got put on report twice. I think he conceded 3 penalties and he made 2 errors. I'm pretty sure he had a smile on his face while he did all of that. It was quite funny to watch. Like he's smiling and then he like slams some bloke on his back, or he's like he's taking a hit up and he's collaring some dude who's trying to tackle him. He's smiling and laughing at him and he makes an error. So it was it just kind of sums things up. Like the talent's there, everything's cool, but it's a young team who don't necessarily have the class, the composure, and the I don't know, the wisdom to win games. So that's all right. Like, it's New South Wales Cup, and the depth is tested, but we've got dudes from under 19s, we've got dudes from under 21s playing reserve grade. Jersey flag, as I said earlier, some of the best under 21s dudes are already in New South Wales Cup. Other dudes are playing Fox Memorial. So you can't look at the Jersey flag results. They are 0-5, I believe. They haven't won a game, but no one should be stressed about that. Because some of these dudes, a few of them, 3 to 4 players, they've come up from SG Ball once that season's finished. So, and you've also got all these dudes playing Fox Memorial. Anyone in the local rugby league community will be aware that the Warriors have certain connections to Fox Memorial clubs. I think Point Chev's all tied in with Ortex. I believe John Ackland is coaching Mount Albert right now. He's a former under-20s coach for the Warriors. So some of the Warriors juniors, they go to Point Chev. Some of the Warriors juniors, like the Fox Memorial Mount Albert team, got a nice concentration of Warriors juniors who are learning off John Ackland. Howard gets a few, and there's a few others floating around, like Otahuhu gets a few juniors as well. So, hey, that's a great reason to go out and watch Fox Memorial, because there are Warriors juniors playing Fox Memorial. But also, those dudes are playing against men. So I don't know what the priority, this is what I was alluding to before, I don't know what the priority is for players in that age bracket. Is it playing Jersey flag? Is it playing Fox Memorial? That's what I'm learning at the moment. I've also been building on this funky winger theory. Great week for Ronaldo Mulatalo. Just doing awesome winger stuff. Also, Jermaine Isako, fantastic kicker of the footy. Like, at this stage, I still believe Mulatalo and Isako, first choice Aotearoa Kiwis wingers. Like, they're just a class above. Isako did like a fake chip and chase in-out swerve, which was absolutely ridiculous as well. I think Zach Lomax is cut from that same cloth, you know? Like, he's doing some
And
crazy...
tell him that.
He's doing some crazy stuff on the wing, even though he doesn't want to be a winger. But he's the perfect winger, because he's great in the air. He's got all the skills. He can do a little kick and chase. He's got the intuition, the instincts to pounce on a grubber. He pops up all over the show. He's difficult to handle. I think Zach Lomax is one of these wingers that I love, where it's just all about unpredictability, doing crazy stuff, natural footy ability.
He had a spectacular game on the weekend, just catching every kick as well, which is the crazy part of, like, he's always been good at that, but here he's catching them all. Like, you know, that goes a few ways. There was one where he went up and caught an incredible bomb, then threw a pass out the back, and then it bounced in front of Michele Ravalawa and went out for a throw. And then he screams at Ravalawa for not getting there. Like, he threw it at his ankles, to be fair. The catch was amazing. The pass, not so much.
There does seem to be a bit of body language, a bit of like, you're not necessarily, like, it's just something. There seems to be a little separation between Zach Lomax and the rest of that team, having watched that game against the Tigers.
Despite the team constantly saying, well, Ben Hunt in particular is the one who's always saying, like, it hasn't affected him. The fact he's leaving, the contract stuff hasn't affected him. The positional stuff hasn't affected him. But, like, Ben Hunt did ask to leave the Dragons himself last year. So I don't know if that's like the best endorsement you can possibly get. There is some of that, but also brilliant game on the weekend.
Some early Niche Cage Derby stats I want to throw out there to help us build the picture of this Warriors versus Dragons matchup. Because the Dragons, unfortunately for you, they're not very good at a few key details where we know the Warriors like to impress. So the Warriors are third in the NRL for average completion rate per game. So they got the third best completion rate per game across the season. The Dragons are 16th. So they got one of the worst. So we know the Warriors love the grind. Dragons debatable. Part of that grind is kick return meters, and maybe this is a bit of Zach Lomax the factor. The Warriors are second for average kick return meters per game. The Dragons are 16th. And I think this is goes without saying, Terrell Sloan, he's not Tommy Trebojevic, and he's not Sean Snickel-Crookster. So I think the Warriors can do a job on Sloan with the kicking game, with the kick chase, and really pinning the Dragons down there into the field, especially when you know the Dragons are going to cough the footy up because they've got one of the worst completion rates in the NRL. But the Dragons do a couple things right. So the Warriors are 12th for missed tackles. The Dragons are 16th, but in this category, it's a good thing. It means they have one of the fewest missed tackles per game in the NRL. The Warriors are 15th for penalties conceded per game. There's only one team better than the Warriors in that category, and it is the Dragons. So at least the Dragons, they're a pretty good tackling team. They're pretty well disciplined. So that's in the Dragons' favor. Both of those are better than the Warriors. But that's countered by having one of the worst completion rates in the NRL and not doing so well returning the kicks. Again, two stats that might not be as important for other teams, but for the Warriors, landing the kicks on the 10-meter line, winning the wrestle, dominating those tackles, going set for set, these are key stats in a Warriors matchup. How are you feeling about the Dragons given that little stat profile?
Well, I'm surprised a bit by the penalties conceded. That I didn't necessarily expect that to be the case. The tackling, I'm less surprised about. I think that's something that the Dragons, when they've played well, and that's not been a consistent thing, but over the last sort of 5 years and beyond that even, they've always been a good tackling team. Like they got good tacklers in there. It's and that's a Flanagan thing as well, I guess, as a sort of coaching directive. That's one of the first things he would have come in and really focused on, is we make sure that this is a good defensive team. And I think they're a decent defensive team. No team's a good defensive team if you make errors coming off your own line. Like there are no good defensive teams who do that. So that's I'll put it this way. There was just something to keep an eye out on in light of what you're saying there, particularly with the kick return meters, and not just kick return. It's like kick challenge and just sweeping the grubbers into the end zone and this kind of stuff. Terrell Sloan got caught out pretty drastically, not this week against who's the Dragons beat this week? I can't remember.
Tigers.
Yeah, Benji Marshall's Tigers beat Benji's Marshall's Tigers. Sloan had an all right game. He was a little bit quiet there, but against the Knights the week before, which I think was right after the Warriors had just played the Knights as well, and just the worst, like torrential rain. Like it was pouring down with rain from minute 1 to 80 and beyond. But Sloan had a pretty rough game there where he made a couple fumbles. He wasn't getting anything like coming off his own line. They were shutting him down quickly. And also just a few things where he didn't sweep across behind the defensive line when they're guarding their line and allowing overlaps and stuff like that. So they actually swapped him over mid-game with Zach Lomax and put Sloan out on the wing and Lomax at fullback, where I actually think Lomax has the skill set to be an excellent fullback. I think he has the skill set to be an excellent winger too, and he's shown that recently. He was a pretty good center. I don't blame them for moving him around, and I suspect he would have been a little more amenable to being moved around if maybe his contract situation was a little bit clearer. But unfortunately, he's going to be doing that stuff for sounds like the Eels, moving forward. So you can imagine Dylan Brown setting them up a few times. That seems like a decent little combination. But that is something to note about in light of some of the stats you've thrown out there, is the Dragons seem to be aware of how that perceived weakness operates and haven't been averse to switching things up a little bit on the fly in order to try and make something out of that. And I do think against the Warriors, yeah, that's a team that will exploit that pretty significantly. Although the one thing Tyrell Sloan does have in his favor in that is he is quick. And so throwing back to what you're saying about the Seagulls, like he can burst, beat a tackle, make 20 meters in a break, or set something up that way on in sort of like a counter-attacking measure. But we'll have to see on Friday night how well any of that stuff translates, because I don't think this is a great matchup for the Dragons on paper. And it used to be. There was a time where the Dragons won like 16 games in a row or something ridiculous against the Warriors. It was fantastic. Feels like that swung very firmly in the opposite direction in recent years, and it feels like the Dragons almost always lose to the Warriors. And yeah, Friday night, we'll see. We'll see what happens.
Just hard and fast, a couple of my favourite young Kiwi NRL players, many of whom have already received a bit of buzz this season. Nofahu White with the Roosters, he's doing a nice job off the bench after earning that Aotearoa Kiwis squad selection last year. He's already played 6 games this season. Last year, he had a career high 8 games. So he should pass that mark. Alec MacDonald with the Melbourne Storm. He's awesome. He is the epitome of a Melbourne Storm forward. Said it before, I'll say it again. And that type of forward is exactly the bloke you want. Reliable, hearty, enthusiastic. That's the dude I want in the Kiwis. And he's not overly big. He is fast for a middle forward, but he doesn't have a whole lot of X factor, but he shows up, and he shows up for the Storm. So if you're doing that for the Storm, you're already doing it at a higher level than a lot of other forwards. So shout out to him. I sees you, Alec MacDonald. Born in Auckland, so hopefully he is pursuing some Aotearoa Kiwis eligibility. Broncos, Xavier Willison, absolute monster. Loved him, talked about him before from the Waikato. Dejan Arce also had an impact with the Eels in the halves with Dylan Brown. Love Dejan Arce. Didn't get the crack first of all. They brought in Blaze Talangi to play in the halves with Dylan Brown, but I've always been a fan of Dejan Arce. Great left boot, good running game, decent defender, good passer. He comes into the team, the Eels win. Like, for a dude who hasn't played a lot of NRL footy and has been in and out of NRL footy with the Cowboys, with the Warriors, and with the Eels, like Dejan Arce has won games. Remember when the Warriors played the Bulldogs at Mount Smart Stadium during the pandemic era? He was going toe for toe with Matt Burton for booming left foot bombs. And the Warriors won that game. Last year, he played a role in a few wins for the Eels. This year, he comes in and he wins for the Eels. So I like Dejan Arce. Hopefully, he gets a consistent opportunity. Matthew Tomoko is amazing for the Raiders. Love what he's doing as well. So a little bit of Kiwi NRL flavour there. We did have the Wellington Phoenix. They were humbled last week. And then they were almost, I wouldn't call that a humbled draw, but they were almost held 0-0 by the victory. And to me, it seemed like the Wellington Phoenix were able to get forward whenever they wanted. Seems like they were generally in control of the game. Victory had a few moments, but it was 0-0 until late in extra time when the Wellington Phoenix do score that winner. First thing I'm thinking about is that idea of a championship win. The Warriors had a draw. So last season we saw some of these wins come from behind wins, narrow victories when you shouldn't necessarily win it. The best the Warriors have done this season is getting a draw. So I don't see a lot of correlation between the two this year, but as far as Wellington Phoenix getting
the Warriors did almost do it against the Storm, and then the Storm reversed it with a championship. Like the Warriors had to come back, then the Storm got the championship win with the last second try.
And championship teams, they're really good at home. The Warriors, as I've said, have been a bit up and down at home. So haven't necessarily seen that championship DNA. No matter how many people are talking up the Warriors, I haven't necessarily seen championship performances from them this season. I've seen top 8 performances. I've seen top 4 performances. Haven't seen this imaginary made up DNA of a championship thing that I'm talking about, which the Wellington Phoenix did show against the Victory.
Guess who has the best home record in the A-League men's this season?
Caketon?
Yep, Wellington Phoenix, 29 points from 12 games at home, 9 wins, 2 draws, only 1 defeat. Central Coast is second. They've got 26 points. That's 3 points less, but they've played 1 extra game. They've actually lost 3 home games. There's a few other teams that have only lost 2, but have drawn a lot. Phoenix, 9 wins out of 12 at home with a couple draws. That is as good as it gets. And thanks to this win against Melbourne Victory, they will be playing a home grand final. They were pretty much going to play it anyway, but now they're guaranteed a home, not just a home final, but a home semi-final, because they've actually now booked top 2, still working on whether they can get first or not. And I think that is even though Central Coast have the tiebreaker now, I think that is toss a coin. Central Coast won on the weekend. They were good. They were solid, sweet as, but let's see what they're like when they have to do that Thursday to Sunday Kyrgyzstan to Gosford turnaround. We'll see if they can still back that up with 3 more points next week. Like I say, toss of a coin for first place, but the Phoenix cannot finish lower than second, which is their best ever. That is their best ever regular season finish. Their previous best was, I think, 4th a couple of years ago. Well, now they're at least second, which means bye through the first round of the playoffs as 3 through 6 play each other, and then home semi-final the week afterwards. They could have a home final if they can finish first, or if Central Coast don't make the final. That's something down the line to consider, but not yet. This team hasn't won a finals game for a decade, so just however they do it, they just got to do that one first. But it is going to be a home semi-final. They're guaranteed that, and that's huge for a team who, I mean, their away form's been pretty good too, but their away form has seen them battling to a lot of draws where they probably should have lost, whereas their home form has seen them winning games where they've been comfortably the better team, but it's also seen them winning games like this one against Victory, where, yeah, they were, it's not like Victory with a better team, but it felt very much like in bad weather conditions, 2 really good defensive teams just going to cancel each other out, 0-0 draw. Sort of suits both teams, sort of doesn't suit both teams, just kind of a bit of a stalemate. That's what it felt like. And then a couple of academy players found something a little bit special where Oscar Van Hattem on as a sub, play a slightly different role, just hang wide, be a bit of almost like a hybrid wingback kind of thing, which is weirdly what Ben Old seems to be doing on the left-hand side. And they picked Sam Sutton left back in a 4, but he was, when they had the ball, he would tuck in and pretend to be like a third centre back. I guess they just like that picture for their build-up a little bit better of having the 3 centre backs, maybe dealing with Victory's press or something like that. I'm sure they had some kind of scouting reason, but I think also you're trying to just get Ben Old on the ball a little bit deeper and a little bit wider and just get him running at them and attacking them. Ben Old had his moments throughout this game. I think that strategy worked. It's just that Ben Old's sort of clinical nature has always been a little bit touch and go, and it was go in this game. He had a few opportunities where he made the wrong decision in the attacking third, or his shot wasn't good enough. But that's why FTP Academy, and Oscar Van Hattem comes on, wins a free kick, and then takes the free kick himself out wide. Delicious delivery, just superb, and like sort of curling like cross between the penalty spot and the 6-yard box, right where you want it, angling towards the keeper, but then curling away from him so he doesn't know whether to rush out or not. And then Finn Sermon just gets up with a big header, deflection off a defender, but still credited to him. I think in the end, there was sort of a bit of debate whether that was an own goal or not. Finn Sermon's first A-League goal, great moment for him because I think he's had a fantastic season. There's been a lot of hype on Paulson, a lot of hype on Ben Old. I think Finn Sermon is right up there. That's been a trilogy, like a trio of just high-performing academy graduate dudes in this team, amongst like plenty of others. But those 3 are the sort of the guys on the pedestal who like are playing well enough that like foreign clubs with blank checks might come stepping in and saying, we want this dude on our team. We like the look of that. So I'm glad Finn Sermon got a spotlight moment, and 95th minute winner. It was a special moment in a season which I think maybe has needed a few more of those. I think maybe just to get the snowball rolling a little bit more heading into the playoffs, it's great timing for them to have that kind of moment, that kind of victory, because they are a team that is very, sort of technical and tactical, but not necessarily with big highlight reels, and don't necessarily have a dude throwing in amazing step overs and scoring brilliant solo goals, or there's maybe a little bit of the entertainment factor missing on top of the efficiency factor. But here, nothing's more entertaining than a last minute winner. So I think that's a great bit of momentum for them, great way to bounce back, and also probably great for the hype leading into their last home game ahead of the finals, which is going to be followed by another home game, and blah blah blah. Just the state of their season where it is right now, you couldn't ask for much more than that at that point. Like when you get into stoppage time against a team like that, to win it in the way that they did at this time of the season, beautiful. I love it. It's like you said, it's championship qualities on display when you're able to do that kind of thing.
Got a couple of flying Kiwis to touch on here as well. What do you reckon about CJ Bott?
Well, here's what I reckon about CJ Bott. Because a few weeks ago for the newsletter, I did a thing where I looked at how the All Whites tracked back into their club stuff straight after international duty, just like an idea that I'd been pondering as reading a few things about how a lot of injuries tend to happen after travel and international breaks and stuff. And whether some of those players would be rested a bit more. I think most of them playing in Europe and only having to travel from North Africa to Europe, it's not as far. But the football phones went from like the players who are in Europe flew from Europe to Christchurch and then back after playing 2 games. CJ Bott played every minute of those 2 games, like to where I was surprised that she wasn't subbed off just to keep her a little bit fresher for a club team, particularly because Leicester City had an FA Cup semi-final coming up against Tottenham. CJ Bott goes back to Leicester after playing all 180 minutes against Thailand in that series, straight into the starting lineup. It's an FA Cup semi-final, so you got to risk it anyway. Sets up a goal in the first half. They're leading for quite a long time in that game, and then concede with about 5 minutes to go. And they ended up losing in extra time, which was a bummer. They missed out on the opportunity to get to Wembley Stadium FA Cup final. However, CJ Bott still, with an assist, played all 120 minutes of that game after playing all 180 minutes of the Football Fern series. Like trip from I don't know how long that round trip is, but it's a very long one, from Leicester City to Christchurch and back again. Incredible amount of like just endurance from her to be able to do that and to still play at such a high level is just prime CJ Bott in those games, and all of those games, but in particular the FA Cup one, which she's just like all energy, crunching players, big tackler, running hard. Like there was a point where the commentator made a note about it, how it's actually, I think, Charlotte Grant, Australian international, came on at like left back, or she was at least stationed at left back, and there was a ball that just lobbed in behind, and CJ Bott just burst past her for pace, and they're like, Charlotte Grant's just been subbed on. CJ Bott's played 100+ minutes at this stage, and she's still winning those sprints. And I'm thinking, like, you don't know the half of it. She played 180 minutes for New Zealand in the international break as well, and that was in New Zealand. Like, you think about the travel. Just, yeah, massive engine from CJ Bott. And I think her fitness has definitely been a factor in what a strong season she's had. She looks faster and stronger and fitter and more athletic than she has in the past. I guess those WSL teams got some good gym membership when you're playing in the top leagues in the world. You get access to the amenities as well. She's definitely someone who it seems like has really taken her fitness to a next level, which has helped take her game to a next level, which is an important thing for the football ferns, I suspect. But yeah, massive from her just to do that. And hopefully we don't see her pulling out the rest of the season with like a random hamstring strain or something like that. Because unfortunately, that's how those things tend to go, is when you play massive minutes, that's when you're more likely to get injured. But you got to do what you got to do. And that was an FA Cup semi-final, and she did as much as she could.
I did see Joe Bell pop up on our social channels as well. Haven't seen Bellinho for a while, so I was intrigued to see what Joe Bell is up to. What is Joe Bell up to?
Yeah, got an assist in their 1-1 draw. Vikings 1-1 draw with Bron on the weekend. So Sweet as. That was actually his first. He has one for the All Whites in between this time, but his first club assist or goal, like first goal contribution, full stop, since I think it was August 2022 when he set up a goal in a game for Bromby in like a Europa League qualifier. It's the start of last season. It's been a long while. Like he obviously had a tough time at Bromby there in Denmark. He fell out of favor when they changed managers and just couldn't really get the hang of the style of play that they were asking him to do, which was different than sort of what he'd been playing beforehand. And went back to Viking kind of to reestablish himself at his old club and had a awkward, like, he had some good games, but it was a little bit of an awkward fit because he was joining mid-season for a team that was trying to compete for a title at that stage, and they just ran out of legs and fell off the horse completely. Stumbled with some bad results towards the end of it, which doesn't help when you're trying to integrate back in the team. But the other thing that really didn't help is they had this other fella, I think it's Marcus Solbakken, who is a Norwegian midfielder with curly hair who played the sort of defensive midfield role. It's like they found an exact Joe Bell replacement, and he was really good too, but it also meant you couldn't really get the balance right when they were both on the field at the same time. So I think that when Solbakken had been there the whole season, that didn't really work in Bell's favor either. But Solbakken's left. I think he went to like Sparta Prague or something like that. I can't remember. He got a transfer elsewhere. He's got the Bromby move that Bell did a couple of years later. Like he's followed that thing as well, but just in a different path. Hopefully that works out for him better than it did for Joe Bell. But it means Joe Bell walks straight into, and I think this was always the strategy. They signed him more for this season and beyond than for last season. Last season was just bonus football, and then here he's like picking up where he left off. And 3 games into the new season, he has been. He's been looking like the player he was before he went to Denmark, which is beautiful. It's fantastic. It's what we've waited quite a while to see. And yeah, capping that with an assist in their most recent game. That's another thing that he always did really well. When his best stuff for Viking was he was getting goal contributions. He's back doing that again. Can't wait to see him doing that for the All Whites as well whenever they next play, which I guess is Nations Cup. But even aside for that, just from Joe Bell's career in particular, resurgent form from him, and it's about due. But it's the way it's lined up has been good for him.
Did he play against Tunisia and Egypt?
He did not. He skipped out that one with a sort of preseason injury, which sort of suggested less that he was seriously injured and more that he was kind of prioritizing the start of the club season. And I guess we've seen why. Like he needed to get back. He needed to get back on the horse himself for Viking and really establish himself there. And I think that that All Whites tour came at a little bit of an awkward time for him in that regard. So understandable. But he's done it. He's getting back to where he was.
Let's finish with a bit of NBL basketball where we have Otago Nuggets. They are 3-0. Franklin Bulls, 3-0. Then we've got Wellington Saints. They are 3-1. And the other team with 3 wins, they have played 5 games. Auckland Tuatara. And that's, I was looking through some of the stats here. Tuatara, you've got Vidanovic, Corey Webster, Wellington, they're 3-1. Your Home Harris. Some of my favorite players. Some of my favorite players in the NBL and the Australian NBL. I guess you want to do some Australian NBL signings?
Well, there's crossover there because Wellington Saints also have Isaiah Leafa, who's looking pretty sharp for them. I think he chipped in with a cheeky 20-odd points in their most recent game, which was yesterday, 100-75 win against Southland, keeping things going, which is actually a bounce back because they'd lost their 20 points of 6 of 12 shooting, 4 of 9 from deep, 5 assists. Excellent game from him. They had who beat them? Who did beat Wellington? Otago Nuggets beat them. It was one of them undefeated clash. Big game earlier on in the round. Isaiah Leafa is the one Kiwi on the first day of the Aussie NBL free agency who got a big move confirmed, like the same as the NBA. Like, who's getting drafted 5 minutes before the draft pick gets announced. Who's going where in free agency days before it gets announced. No different in Australia. So we knew Isaiah Leafa was going to the Sydney Kings, but it's pretty cool. They got that done on like day one, made a priority of it, amongst a few others. Because like I don't know, that feels like, the Breakers and Kings finished in a similar spot last year. Breakers were a little bit better than them. Year before that, they were grand finalists against each other. Kings were a little bit better than the Breakers, but it went down to a decisive game 5. That feels like it should just be a sideways move. Yeah, for some reason, maybe it's just me being a little bit jaded about the Breakers start of free agency, where it's just like, let's watch the Kiwi lads leave and sign some Australians to replace them. Jonah Bolden's in, Mitch McCarron's in, Mojave King's in, who was born in Dunedin, but has said all along he wants to play for Australia. So maybe playing for the Breakers will help swerve him back. I don't know if he's literally eligible for the Aussie. I mean, he's not getting near that team at the moment, but under the Modi Maor tutelage, who knows? He's done more with less in the past.
Technically, if he wants to play for New Zealand, he wouldn't be playing for the Breakers, right?
Yeah, well, that's the thing. As it stands, Sam Meninga is the only New Zealander on the Breakers roster, which means he's got fewer New Zealand teammates with the Breakers than he did with Cairns Taipans last season, where he at least had Sam Wardenberg. That'll change, but like when Tom Abercrombie's retired now and Leafa's leaving, Finn Delaney's opting out. Don't know if they'll re-sign Dan Fotu or not. Like, it's not like they had an abundance to begin with. It is a notable trend, and when they're just looking at locals being New Zealanders or Australians and not seeing the distinctions there, don't love that. There will be a few Kiwis on the development roster at least, although what we learned last year was the same thing we've known in the past, which is that it's cool that they sign them. It's cool that they give these guys high caliber training throughout the season. They don't play them though. Callan Davidson didn't play a minute last season, and I think Max Darling only got 1 or 2. And yeah, Alex McNaught, even, who had played a little bit more the year before, 30, 40 odd minutes, he played about 7 this most recent, something like that. So those guys don't really get opportunities. That's not ideal. But then Isaiah Leafa going to the Sydney Kings, that's why that's extremely exciting, because that is a Sydney Kings team that had a terrible season and are not taking the risks of that happening again. They're bringing back Brian Gorgian to be their coach, like one of the best to ever do it at the NBL level. Best coach you could possibly have. Well, there you go. They've brought back Xavier Cooks, who's been an absolute superstar of the league in recent times. They've made a couple of really apparently quite exciting sort of Aussie college graduate signings. A couple of those dudes are coming in. They've signed a few other fellas to bolster stocks. Big man from Cairns, I can't remember his name. There's a few of these, and Isaiah Leafa is part of that. Not just part of that. Not like they signed Sam Timmins to be their 12th man out of 12 on the roster at last minute last season. This is Isaiah Leafa getting signed on day one, which means very specific plan for how they're going to use him. And I do feel like Leafa is a guy who he's been good. He's been very good for the Breakers the last 2 seasons, but I feel like there's more to come on top of that. There's like a level of consistency that he hasn't quite found yet. There's a sort of a reliable role that he hasn't quite hit. I don't think he's going to be quite the defender that Shea Ili is, but he's a very good defender, and he's arguably got the potential to be a better outside shooter than Shea Ili. Let's see if that Sydney Kings sort of, I don't know, / Brian Gourjian kind of boost is the one that's going to take him to that level, because I know he's capable of going to another level on top of what we've seen. And maybe he just felt like it tapped out at the Breakers and taken that as far as he could, and here's an opportunity to find that next step with the Kings instead.
He is averaging 32 minutes per game in the NBL. He's shooting 37.5% on 3-pointers. He's got 17.7 points per game, 3.3 assists. So he's doing his thing for the Wellington Saints in the NBL. What do we need to know about the 2 undefeated teams, Otago Nuggets and the Franklin Bulls?
Well, the Otago Wildcats again, like the and they're starting.
I feel like we talk about Otago Nuggets a lot because they're always at the top of the NBL ladder, it seems. And when we're talking about the best teams every week, we're talking about the Otago Nuggets every week. So it does seem like we're hitting these topics frequently. So I'm not sure we've got the things we always talk about. Not sure if you got anything new about Otago Nuggets basketball.
New, not sure. I mean, like Ty Webster is back now. He sort of missed the first couple of games, but he played this week and looked like Ty Webster. That's all he can ask for. He's going to be one of the best players in the league if he's fit and healthy and firing. Ben Henschel is one of their other Perth guys. Like, I don't think we haven't seen Dante Russo-Nance yet. He's got a wee injury, so he hasn't been available. Jack Andrew, I don't know if he's going to be re-signed by Perth, but he was a Perth dude, and he's been good. He's been feels like he's taken a step forward as a Kiwi big man in the league, where he's now ready to be like a starter and at the NZ level anyway, and grabbing a bunch of rebounds, putting the ball in the hoop a few times. But Ben Henschel is an Australian prospect that they've got who has been fantastic. He scored 29 points when they beat the Saints. Like, that is top of the table. There was 2 undefeated teams at that stage. Henschel scored 29 on 9 of 15 shooting at 5 3-pointers. Couple imports doing some nice things as well. Ty Webster tying things together. Jack Andrew grabbing the rebounds. It's a solid team. And when Dante Russo-Nance comes back, that's when that team will get extremely funky, because I don't know how much he moves the needle for them. They're already an undefeated team at this point. They've just beaten the Saints and made a big statement, but he's just a super exciting young Kiwi player who was supposed to. He signed a 3-year contract with Perth. It was going to be DP and then full roster. They've rearranged that slightly in order to give them room, just a bit more flexibility to sign another local player. So they've rearranged that to where his second year is now going back to being another development player year. So he doesn't quite get the full roster boost he was initially going to, but that doesn't really matter that much. Like, he's going to be in a similar spot on the depth chart anyway, and we will see more of him for Otago than we will for Perth. So when he gets in there for Otago, that's what I want to see. I want to see what he's doing, just how much he's impacting, how much he's scoring, how efficient that shot is, all that kind of stuff. Because he is a dude who has very high potential.
Franklin Bulls,
Sam Timmins is pretty good. He goes all right. What did they do this week? 101 to 83 against Manawatu Jets. Is it Luther Muhammad, I think, is their sort of main import. He's been fantastic. And then just kind of like the funny thing is, last year they were kind of built as like the sort of fringe breakers type guys. Now they've got fringe breakers guys who just used to be breakers. It's no longer fringe breakers, it's ex-breakers. It's Ethan Rusbatch and Isaac Davidson, Sam Timmins, Jay Brantley, I forget which Jamal, I forget which one it is. The lesser Brantley. Yeah. Just Brantley.
Well, we talked about, we literally had this conversation last week, so it's a very serious issue.
Yeah, I guess Franklin haven't developed in a week, but they are a good team with a lot of very interesting players who are sort of like interesting for this level. Not necessarily guys you're looking at like maybe Sam Timmins might get another shot at an Aussie NBL team. I'm not sure how that'll track, but it's one of those things where like these guys have played there, maybe not getting back there. But at this level, they're dudes who know exactly what they're doing. They know how to win games, and they are winning games on the back of some good import play as well alongside them.
It also seems like, considering Otago have been a pretty good team for a while, and Sam Timmins was a pretty influential player for Otago during that period, and now he's gone to Franklin, and Franklin's pretty good. Like, it does tell you a bit about Sam Timmins and what he's up to in the New Zealand NBL. And that is the Niche Cast. We will be back on Thursday with a subscriber podcast. We'll be running through NRL team list, Kiwi NRL team list. We'll be previewing more of the Niche Case Derby. We'll be looking forward to the Wellington Phoenix action. I think that Blackcaps T20 game might be Thursday night.
Yeah, I think so.
So we might talk about that little preview there. That is 2 a.m. So it might be 2 a.m. Friday. So
yeah, it is.
Look forward to that. Lots to discuss on our subscriber podcast on Thursday, available on Patreon and with a paid Substack subscription. Big up to everyone. Big up Aotearoa. Kia kaha. Love yourself. Stay beautiful. And cheers. Lots of cheers. Cheer, cheer.